Okay, hello, hello. We are live. Sorry for the late start here. We're having a little technical difficulties in Nuits St. Georges. Welcome, everyone. I don't think it's a hailstorm. It's an internet storm, a firestorm in the cellar right now. But we have Sebastian Abrique right here, our Chief Technical Officer in Europe. In fact, he's our Chief Officer everything in Europe. Coming to us live from Belgium. He's working with Gregory Gouges as we speak to try to get him online, even though we've done a bunch of tests, of course, and something's going on with the internet or the connection. So we're gonna just kick things off with just how it started, just you and me, Lily. That's it. You know, back how it was in the beginning.
Yes.
I'm feeling very nostalgic from our from
April.
back in April, March? Was it March or April? April, you're right, April.
Been a while. So
It's
you have your blinds open. How are you doing today? Are you ready for, we can also talk about the auction. Here's Gregory.
True, that's something. Oh, Gregory's here, fantastic. Let's see. He's connecting. We got to get the audio and the video. So I did, you know, I've been so fascinated with the conversations that we've been having with these great winemakers. I neglected to say either of the previous sessions that everybody participating in our Grande Fête de Bourgogne has given us some lots direct from their cellars in the upcoming auction, which starts tonight. I got a double header tonight, Zoom for lunch and auction for dinner. But tomorrow is where we have all the Burgundy producer consignments, 11 electric consignments Friday night. The auction will end. So if you're home and can watch us online, please join us. And voila. We have Gregory, okay, we have a video. Now we're waiting for the audio.
Okay, really sorry. With the computer, I just take my phone. Maybe the result is not the same.
No, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay, we see you. We see you, we see the picture. Perfect, perfect.
Okay.
I think it's even better than the test, I think. Maybe the phone is better than the computer. The phone is the future, right?
Yeah, but I don't hear very well. You have to speak.
Okay. We have Sebastian here in case who could translate a little bit, but welcome, Gregory. Thank you for joining us. It is a great pleasure to have you here. 14 hectares, all in Nuits St. Georges. You just celebrated your 100th anniversary in 2019. And Domaine Henri Gouges has really been at the top of the appellation in Nuits St. Georges, one of the most important appellations in all of Burgundy. And it is a great honor to welcome you, the fourth generation of the Gouges family. Welcome.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the introduction.
And how is Burgundy right now? What's going on for you at the Domaine? Is this is it business as usual or a little bit different?
It's totally different because usually it's in this period. Normally we travel a lot of for come to see you, for example, in US, or you go a lot of in Asia in January, February, and we come back normally in March here in Nuits St. Georges for the an auction called La Vente des Hospices de Nuits St. Georges. Mars here in Bourgogne, it's very in Nuits St. Georges, it's very important for see the customer, seller, and make a lot of testing on the seller. But actually, it's very different than usual. We don't see a lot of people. The cellar is totally empty, very quiet, and we have to speak by Zoom. And we have to make a virtual testing. It's really different, but everything is fine. We are in good condition, good health. No COVID in the family for time, and we hope it will still for the few next months.
Well, that's good. That's good. Well, we are glad to have you here, at least for Zoom. So maybe one of the things that will be good in the future is we can all connect online even when there is no pandemic, because I think it's a great way for people to meet and connect without travel, even though we look forward to traveling again soon. So you're the fourth generation of the Gouges family to make wine. Did you ever think you would do something else, or you always knew you would make wine?
Alors, I'm the fourth generation in Domaine Henri Gouges. I work with my cousin, Antoine, on my generation. And my grandfather, Henri Gouges, have started to make wine here at the domain in Nuits St with the Domaine Henri Gouges. But we know the generation before, and we don't know how many have made wine, but with different versions. Henri Gouges was one of the first to make a complete domain with the work on the vineyards, the work on the cellar, on the work of bottling and selling the bottle. It was more usual in Burgundy before the 1920, 1930 to find in one side the wine grower for the production of the grapes, for the production of the work on the vineyards, and in the other side, the négoce. The négoce buys the grapes, makes the winemaking, put in bottle, and sells the wine. But Henri Gouges was one of the first to make the work on the vineyards, and put in bottle, and sell the wine directly here in France, but also outside the France and Europe, and particularly in the US market.
Yeah, he was really one of the real pioneers, you know, of Burgundy. And I think that's interesting. Now that you've had 100 years of making wines, what has really changed for the family over the last 100 years? Are you still, I mean, Gouges is considered, you know, connoisseurs really love the wines, and it's kind of an insider's wine in Burgundy. And I think, you know, what have you seen change over 4 generations from what your grandfather and your father has told you over the years and what you're seeing now? How has Burgundy changed?
It's very hard for me to explain the evolution for the last century, but I can explain what I have seen on the last 15, 20 years. I think it was a very hard period for my grandfather, because for Henri Gouges, he was a very small producer, in middle of a big region with a lot of negociants. The negotiation of Burgundy, of Nuits St was very powerful. And it was very, very hard for him to change the system. For example, you know, Henri Gouges, with other domains like Tangerville, Rousseau, they have created the first association of appellation. And they have created the ENO system with the actual classification of Burgundy appellation, village appellation, premier cru appellation, and grand cru appellation. Before that, it was very easy for the negociant, for example, to blend some appellation and put on the label another name or another appellation name. Wow. Because before that, it was not really regulation, and it was totally possible, permit to blend sometimes some appellation and sometimes some grape variety. But it was very, very hard, a very big work for Henri to change that, put this new classification, and after that, make the application of this new regulation. And it was a very long part of his life for make that. On the same time, Henri Gouges have worked to build the domain, to expand the vineyards, and try to give to the customer to put in the bottle the best expression of the terroir. And today, it's very important for my generation, but it was the same for the generation before of my father, to keep the same philosophy. It's important to make some evolution, to understand the new practice in the winery, in the vineyard, but it's very important to keep the respect of the customer and the respect of each terroir. When I have started to work with my father in 2003, it was important for me to change a little bit the style of the wine because the reputation of the wine of the domain for a long time was make wine with a big structure, a big power, with a very, very long capacity of aging, but sometimes need to wait very long time, and sometimes wait a little too long. And for some restaurants, for example, it was not possible today to keep the bottle 15 or 20 years.
Right.
And it was the new challenge, the new deal for me to try to give in the wine of the domain a little bit more accessible wine, a little more accessible tannin, because the austerity on the wine was not easy to sell in now, actually, in the new vision of the wine. The customer want wine more immediately accessible.
Yeah.
And it's why we have built a new winery with a gravity flow process, with the respect of the berry, and a work of infusion with a very light, very gentle extraction of the tannin. It's just an evolution on the style of the wine, but I really hope I have kept the same philosophy of my grandfather with the respect of each terroir.
I think you've done that because I mean I drink your wines a lot, and I believe that they are, just as you said, they are much more approachable in their youth, but they still age very well. I mean, they
Yes.
really are the pinnacle of the appellation. And is everything that you make now Domaine estate bottled, or is some still negociant a little bit?
No, everything we make on the vineyards is for Domaine Henri Gouges. We don't sell grapes. Everything goes in the bottle. But for the last 2 years, we have started to buy some grapes from some very small wine grower, because for the last 5 vintages, the yield on the domain was very, very low. And it's very important for us, I have explained, to respect the terroir, respect the style of the Pinot Noir. And we don't try to put fertilizer, for example, in the vineyards. We try to stay in organic system. And when we don't try to give food to the vineyards for make more quantity of grapes. And it's why we try to find good supplier with the same philosophy for make cuvée of négoce, Maison Henri Gouges, for give to the possibility to the customer to have a little more allocation of the wine of the domain. The problem for the last 5-6 years now, we have small yield, but a very big ask of the wine. And we work by allocation, and it's very hard to give a lot of bottle to each customer. It's only just few bottles for each customer.
Yeah, we know. Can I make a formal complaint right now?
yes, you are, because it's fine for us, but it's not good for the customer, and it's not really good for the view of the domain. It's important for us to give to the customer what he wants.
Well, a lot of your wine goes to the U.S. Like I think 25% of your wine goes to the U.S. So it is definitely you have good distribution here. And speaking of good distribution, we have 2017s currently available in the market, and we're going to taste 3 of them and talk to us about 2017, and then a little bit about 18 and 19 and maybe even 20 in Nuits St. Which is of course unique kind of microclimate there in Burgundy.
Yes, for the 17, it's maybe the more normal vintage in middle of the last because it's the more classical. We have the weather was normal, not too hot, not too cold, not fast, not else, and the yield was almost normal. And I very love 17 because we have a very good freshness. We have a good balance between the acidity and the structure, the tannin. I don't very love the Pinot Noir with a big ripeness. I don't love the jammy style. I prefer in my wine have a good freshness, a good acidity, but it's important to have a good balance with the acidity, with a good structure and the good power. And I think 17, it's the really fresh Pinot Noir of Burgundy. I think in the 80, 90, 70, maybe the style was more close to 2017. For example, 2018, 2019, 20 was more hype with a bigger ripeness, bigger tannin, bigger structure, more bigger level of alcohol. It's fine. It's very lovely vintages, but maybe not the more representative of a normal Pinot Noir of Burgundy. And I think for the 17, for some vintages, it's possible to have a little closed wine just after bottling, but 17 is really approachable today. It's very easy to take pleasure and open the bottle today, particularly for the village and some premier cru like Corée Saint-Georges.
Well, you have the, Lily, you have the 2017 Nuits St. Georges, right, that you're drinking. Sebastian, are you drinking the same, the Nuits St. Georges?
Yeah, I'm drinking the Clos des Porets 17.
It's on wine too.
We'll wait for you. Well, because I actually had the Gouges 17, but I drank mine earlier. I couldn't wait. So we're gonna let Lily. Why don't you lead us through the 17 Nuits St. Georges?
Well, I think what's really beautiful about this wine, especially out of half bottle, which is how we came upon it in the US on this occasion, is that even for an accessible vintage, we've drank a lot of 17s this week doing these sessions. And I think in half bottle, these wines that are really traditionally quite austere, it's really shining. There's lots of bright red fruit. And to me, there's always kind of the Gouges signatures, like that little bit of minerality and meatiness that not necessarily do you find in other young wines. That's always kind of an underlying presence, particularly in the Gouges wines, that even in something so young as 2017, it's already there.
And I think that's, yeah, I found all the 17s to be delicious. I actually had, the Les St. Georges last week of yours as well, but I got that replaced, thankfully. But, you know, I just, what have you done in the winery? What kind of changes have you made to make the wines a little more approachable?
Alors, I think the bigger evolution on the winery is the work by gravity flow. Before that, in the older winery, all the process was made at the same level, and it was more easy for us to use pump for put the grapes on the vat before the vinification. But the result of the work with the pump sometimes is to break the skin and to break the seed and the pips. It's very easy to make a test with a berry of raisin, of grapes. You have just to put in the mousse, and if you make like a chewing gum, after 2-3 minutes, the tannin are very dry. After 4-5 minutes, it's not very interesting. The flower, the best flower, the more interesting flower are in the first seconds. And with the gravity flow process, we keep the integrity of the berry. We don't break the skin, and we use a destemmer because we don't make full grapes vinification. We use a destemmer, but a very gentle system of destemmer. And it's possible to put the hand on the vat and take the berry, no break. And after that, the fermentation will start inside the berry with a very, very small part of juice. It's easy to take another example, like a tea. If you just put with a good temperature of water, your tea, a good tea, on the water, and just to wait a few minutes with a very gentle spoon, you have not the same result if you just put with a spoon and you break on the taste. The extraction is very, very important. And you have to make a very gentle extraction for take the more gentle tannin, the more, I can't say easy tannin, but the more suave, the more delicate tannin.
Wow. Sounds complicated and very, and how long did it take you to come up with this? Did you have to like experiment, you know, over time? Or did you just know that this is something you want to do, or just, you know, because I mean, it's a big change, right?
Yes. You know, when I have started to work, the generation before me, of my father and my uncle, they have made a very great work on the vineyards. The condition of the vineyard was very, very, very fine. And all the organic system was already worked very well. The middle age of the vineyards was very fine. Everything was between 50 to 60 years. Perfect for me. The control of the yield was made. Never too big yield. Every year, a very good quality of grapes. But after that, sometimes for some vintages, the grapes, the good quality of the grapes was sometimes a little lost by the winery. It was easy for me to just change the alone part, the alone bad part of the domain by the winery, because all of the rest was very, very fine by the generation before me.
Well, we have some interesting questions from the crowd here. I think, you know, Lily, maybe bring a couple of them online.
So as you're talking about kind of changing the style since your arrival at the winery in 2003, people are now talking about, since the history of Gouges is so much about the long-term aging of the wines. Someone brought up the question of they own 2009 and 2010s. Because they are perhaps in this slightly lighter, slightly more approachable style, what do you think, how long do you think they should age them?
It's always very hard for me to say how many times you have to keep the bottle, because every customer have a definition of aging very different. I know a lot of customers, they have already drink every 2009, every 2012 or 2015. But some other customers keep the same way than before, and they keep the bottle on the cellar. And I really hope, I just can't say I hope, the evolution of the style of the wine of the domain is just for the accessibility. And I really hope it don't change the capacity of aging. For time, we have to wait maybe 10, 20 years more for test 2005 or 2009 and say, yes, we have kept the capacity of aging. But for time, everything I've tested, I'm very happy, because when I test a wine of 10 years, for example, now, I keep a good wine, a good freshness, a good volume of wine. We have no evolution on the wine. And I think the new winery keep the capacity of aging and give a new accessibility on the wine.
Perfect. It goes both ways. You can drink them young and you can still age them as long as you want.
It was the project. It was we have tried to make that.
Definitely.
But you still feel that the 9s and 10s will age are still the greatest vintages, and still have more aging potential? Or do you feel that the vintages are coming together in this? They all have this kind of great quality of drinkability and ageability.
I can't say if my wine, the wine I make today, will have the best aging or better aging. I hope the aging was the same like my grandfather, because I can't show you here, but just 3 levels under me, we have a very old cellar with not all vintages, but almost all vintages of the domain. And sometimes for very special occasion, we open very old bottle. And when I open, for example, we have opened a 1937 2 months ago, and the wine was very fresh, very accessible, very old wine, yes.
Sebastian, did you get the call? Did you get the phone call, Sebastian?
Yes, yes, but it's a very big emotional moment, and the wine is alive. I really hope make the same wine. I just know today on my wine maybe the definition is maybe a little better young, but I really hope make the same wine of my grandfather for the aging.
Yeah, no, but I think what I was trying to ask was, 2009, 2010 consider the Grande vintage, right? So
yes.
You think that still the Grande vintages will still age the best and still age the longest or longer than other vintages, or they're starting to come together? The style is coming together where they're all going to age well.
It's very hard to answer, because between 2009 and 2010, you say an example. 2009 was with a big ripeness, very sunny vintage. 2010 was more cold. Mm-hmm. When we have made 2009 in the winery, when we have tested the first wine, we have said it's a big vintage, a very big vintage. And everybody is coming on the winery here at the domain or in other domain. And everybody have said, yes, it will be a very good vintage for now and for aging. But 2010 was totally different. When we have made 2010 on the winery, it was not, not exceptional. In 2010, for the first year of aging, the wine was very close, with a lot of reduction and not easy to test. We have started to test very well the 2010 2 years after, 2 years after bottling, 3 years after vinification. And for the aging, I think it's the same. It's very hard for me to give an answer with the capacity of aging of the best vintage of 2009 or best vintage 2010. I really hope for both, but it's very, very hard.
Understood. So I think we have, you kind of showed us a map, Lily. You showed us some vineyard. You gave us a little flash of vineyard. You teased us with the map. Maybe can we look at the map a little bit? And yes, here we go. So the Nuits St. will the village wine come from all over, including the top vineyards, or does it come from different vineyards? And talk about where is the domain located currently on this map?
Yes, alors, it's a very synthetic map. It's not, we have not a big definition on this map, but it's just for show. The domain is just on the middle, on the town of Nuits St. Yes, just here, close to the mountain, a little bit on the left. On the town, the city cut the appellation in two parts. You can see a south part in direction of Beaune, and the north part in direction of Dijon. The north part is the side of Rhône-Romanée. On this side, we have only one block called les Chéniaux. And usually this vineyards give wine a little more elegant, a little more fine. Sometimes we say it's the more feminine style. It's more the style of Rhône-Romanée. And in the south part, we can see more blocks, more vineyards. The domain is 14.5 hectares, 14 on the south part, and just half of 1 hectare on the north part. The south part make wine with bigger tannin, bigger structure. The soil give wine with bigger power. And Henri Gouges have taken the decision to build vineyards in the south part, because Henri Gouges have loved make wine with a big power and big structure. But it's important for me now to show it's possible to make wine with less austerity, more approachable, maybe a little more like the north part in the south part.
Yeah, you have succeeded. I mean, you see, it's interesting. All the great vineyards, Les St. Georges, of course,
yes.
Les Vauquin, Clos de Poré, Les Pouliers. These are the known names in Nuits St. Georges. And there's some amazing wines coming out of Nuits St. Georges. And I think, you know, it's interesting. Nuits St. Georges, you know, centuries ago was considered the best of Burgundy, right? I mean, many, you know, when you look hundreds of years back, I mean, the reputation of the vineyard was one of the best, you know, but I guess like the negociant, you know, kind of business kind of took that away a little bit. And now, thanks to producers like you and Chevillon and some of the other, you know, obviously Loire is in Nuits St. Georges and Ligier Belair, and there's so many great producers. Meunier made a huge investment. So everybody's kind of coming back. You were always there, but now everybody's coming back to the appellation and saying, hey, don't forget about Nuits St. Georges.
Yes, because yes, the reputation of Nuits St. Georges was for a long time very well, but maybe a little less international compared to Gevrey-Chambertin or Rhône-Romanée. And maybe we have one explication for that. In Nuits St. Georges, we have 41 Premier Cru, but no Grand Cru. We think it's a little mistake of the history, but we have no Grand Cru in Nuits St. Georges. When we start to speak about an appellation, when you speak about Chambol-Musigny, Gevrey-Chambertin, immediately you see Grand Cru, big wine, big appellation. In Nuits St. Georges, we think we have the capacity to, maybe Nuits St. Georges have the capacity to have Grand Cru. In very old classification, for example, classification of Laval, it's possible to find les St. Georges, les Vauquin, and les Cailles with a potential level of actual Grand Cru. In the classification of Laval, it was not the name of Grand Cru, but it was première cuvée or tête de cuvée. Alors, this map is not very old, but in the very old map, with the color of les St. Georges, les Vauquin, and les Cailles, it was possible to compare the color with the Grand Cru, the actual Grand Cru of Chambol or Gevrey-Chambertin. But
Les St. Georges is I mean, Les St. Georges, I heard, you know, I think we were discussing this, that there's, I mean, the possibility, I mean, I think it is, if there's one vineyard, right, it would be Les St. Georges to be the Grand Cru, right? Don't you think? Would be the Grand Cru if there was one?
Yes. If you have to choose one for coming a Grand Cru, yes, it's Les St. Georges. At the domain, we have les cailles, but we have also les Vaucrins. I very love les Vaucrins because Vaucrins have a very, very big personality. We have in les Vaucrins a very big density of tannin, a big density of structure. But sometimes Vaucrin can be a little close. Sometimes for Vaucrin, you have to wait 5-6 years to find the good window to open the bottle. And Saint-Georges is totally different. If you open a Saint-Georges a Saint-Georges at 10 years or 50 years, every time the wine will be open, accessible, interesting. And that's why I think les Saint-Georges have really the capacity to be a Grand Cru.
Now, is there any movement within Burgundy or within Nuits St. Georges to try to get that approved, or what is that process like?
Alors, before to speak of the actual movement, the slow movement of the ask of new appellation, I have to speak of the history. Before the appellation d'origine contrôlée, through the INAO system, Institut National des Appellations d'Origine, we have no the same level of appellation. And my grandfather, Henri Gouges, was the bigger winner of Les Saint-Georges in Nuits Saint-Georges. Actually, it changed. Actually, it's Thibault Ligier-Belair with 2.5 hectares. But in 1920, it was my grandfather. And when Henri Gouges have created the first association of the appellation and make the first level of appellation, the story say Henri Gouges haven't asked the level of Grand Cru for Les Saint-Georges or keep the credibility of the classification. Because today, when we say Grand Cru, when you read Grand Cru on the bottle, you have the view of a big wine, of famous wine. But in 1920, in 1930, Grand Cru was not the same signification. It was just grand vin, big wine. But the actual signification of Grand Cru was not the same. And it was very, very hard for some negociants to understand that. Because a lot of negociants in Nuits Saint-Georges or in Bourgogne was totally afraid to lose money with a new classification of Grand Cru. Today, they are very happy with this classification.
Right.
But 80 years ago, it was not the same.
It
used to be tête de cuvée. Sorry, John. The best level used to be like this tête de cuvée, première cuvée, all that things. And I'd like to just add one little thing, which I think is interesting historically. At the end of the 19th century, most of these villages were able to add to their name their most famous climat. I think it's 1892, Nuits, the village of Nuits became Nuits Saint-Georges. Gevrey became Gevrey-Chambertin, Beaune, Romanée, Puligny, Montrachet. And if you look at that, what is very interesting is that all these crus became Grand Cru in the 1936 classification, except Nuits Saint-Georges. But it's probably because Henri Gouges wanted to avoid any conflict of interest. Like
exactly.
Cède d'Angerville could have done the same with the Clos des Ducs in Volnay, but it was also part of the thing. So we were dealing probably with the people who were too nice or too gentlemen.
Right.
Yes, it's a principal explication. It's possible to find other explain with different level of taxi, but I prefer the story of my grandfather. And today, with Thibault Ligier-Belair, for example, with Domaine Chevillon, with Erwan Fevlet, we have created a new association for asking the qualification in Grand Cru for les Saint-Georges, but it don't move a lot of. It's very hard. Actually, the INEAO is coming a very big administration, French administration, but European administration, and it's not really easy to change something.
I hear also that the Vaux Romanée mafia is very strong, and they don't like any new Grand Crus.
No, not sure the Vaux Romanée domain have an impact of that.
No, I'm kidding. We have another interesting question about taxes. Maybe was there tax reasons involved because the Grand Crus have to pay more taxes? Was that maybe
yes. In a Grand Cru, you have to pay. In 1936, a little more taxes. In 2020, you have to pay more taxes. Yes.
Right. So the decision could have been financial. Henri could have said Grand Cru. He looked at the bill. He said, "No, it's okay." He said, "No, thank you."
Yes,
right. Yeah.
Yes.
Let's continue on with the wines. We're talking so much. We're not tasting enough. Sebastian, take us through the 2017 Clos des Poré.
Clos des Poré, which is the only monopole of the domain, right?
It's a monopole.
Yes. It's a monopole,
but it doesn't say monopole
of the domain. Yes.
Does it say monopole on the label? You don't say monopole.
Alors, we for a few years we have just taken off les Saint-Georges monopole on the label because I don't know if you see the label, but we have just tried to.
We have
yes, we have the bottle. In 2012, we have just changed a little bit the label.
Right.
It was very important for us to keep the green line, for keep the identity of the domain. We have this green on this line through 1934, and it was very important for us to keep that. But we have tried to clean a little bit the label, and we have taken off the name monopole. But normally it's possible to find monopole on the cork.
The cork of the.
Normally.
I don't. It's
no.
not. But is it Clos des Poré is a monopole? Not Les St. Georges is not. Just Clos.
No, it's Clos des Poré. Clos des Poré. Yes.
It doesn't say monopole on my cork.
Okay. Yes. For a few years we have tried to clean a little bit, but now for 19 and 20 we have put the inscription monopole on the label because a lot of people have asked for us. You have lost your monopole. And no, we have not lost the monopole. We have just tried to clean the label.
Right.
To save taxes?
What's that, Sebastian?
Is it to save taxes?
No, not for that.
Right. Well, I mean, it is. I mean, yeah, the style of the label of monopole it's very few. I was actually one of the questions I was going to ask is I've never seen another Clos des Poré, and now I know why because you own it all. The monopole.
I don't know if you can show the map.
Yeah, which the big map or the Gouges map?
The big map, the bigger one.
No problem.
Thank you. If you see on the map, I don't know if you can read, but just here, yes, just here, you can just read les poirées.
Yeah.
You don't see Clos des Poré Saint-Georges, and you don't see les poirées or something. It's les poirées. Right. Because les poirées, it's the name of the lieu-dit. And the lieu-dit, normally, it's the same name of the appellation, but not for this block. The lieu-dit is les poirées, but les poirées are cut in two parts, and it's possible to find two appellations. The right part is Clos des Poré Saint-Georges. It's a monopole of the Domaine Gouges. It's 4 hectares. It's a big monopole. On the left, the south part, it's les Porés. it's only les porés. For example, Fête have a big part of les porés, but it's not a monopoly, and it's not Clos des Porés Saint-Georges. In Burgundy, it's sometimes a little hard to understand all the appellation, but it's maybe the same beauty. I think the style of the wine is not so far to les porés of Fête, but it's a monopoly, Clos des Porés Saint-Georges.
It's a great wine. It's drinking, I mean, 17 styles.
It's drinking super well.
Delicious, right? Sebastian, give us a tasting note. He froze right when right when I asked him for the tasting note. He froze. I mean, look at
pressure.
I think that was almost on purpose. So anyway, I'll give you a taste. I mean, it's you know, what I love about your wines is the deep dark fruit. Like there's this deep darkness to it, like that kind of forest and the black and the purple side, you know, I mean, it's very serious, but it's very approachable. There's an approachability, the style I can see, and it's also the style of 17 is so delicious. Like 17 is a vintage that I right now have no problem drinking and enjoying. I think like 6, 7, 8, 2006, 2007, 2008, 2011, some of these vintages just lend themselves to earlier drinking, and 17 seems to be one of them. But I think Jean-Nicolas Mayo said it reminds him of 2007, but richer. And I think that's what we see here. There's a richness to the 2017 vintage. And I think everybody's kind of forgetting it because 15 and 16 were such great vintages and such different styles. Oh, but it's like a shadow year. It's like lost in the shadow of those two big vintages.
But it's why it's very interesting to test 17 and take pleasure now with, because for time I don't really open 15. It's a very great vintage, but I prefer see 15 on my cellar, or maybe open in 10 years, 15 years, I don't know. And with 17, yes, you can take pleasure actually immediately. You can open the bottle, just avoid 10 minutes, maybe decant if you want a little bit, and take pleasure immediately.
I tasted also 11 Clos des Porés a few days ago, and 11 is also a very good drinking vintage, but 17 has this like extra kiss, you know. It's super easy to drink, but as John said, it has this structure. It has something more than 7 for sure, even 11. I mean, you want to drink everything. You could drink everything right now, but you like want to keep few. I don't know if we'll manage to do that, but it's a great drinker's vintage, I think.
Delicious. Yes. And don't forget, Sebastian, to keep some of that extra kiss for your wife tonight.
Yes, you have to take 12 bottles. You have to take 12 bottles and drink one every year, and I'm sure the last one will be the best.
Or just take Magnums.
Right.
Or Magnum, if you want Magnum, yes.
And now, of course, let's move on to Les St. Georges, the Grand Cru of the appellation. I can say it. I can say it's a Grand Cru. To me, it's a Grand Cru. It's just
almost Grand Cru. Yes, quasi Grand Cru. I make a mistake. Les St. Georges. Sorry, Les St. Georges.
Right, Les St. Georges. It's an incredible wine. Incredible. You've owned it since 1933. What do you think is so distinct about this vineyard? What makes it so special?
Every time when I make testing on the cellar, we test Les St. Georges in last position. And usually I speak a lot with the village, with the Poré, Prouillet, Vaucrin, and I explain the terroir, I explain the vinification, the style of the wine. But usually for the St. Georges, I just put the wine on the glass, and I just wait. And usually the customer taste the wine and the wine speak alone. Usually when we taste wine, we have not need to explain, because this wine is to have a big power, but it's a very I can't say sweet power, but it's very round wine, big wine, but very warm. No austerity, no dry tannin. And if you open the bottle, if you open the bottle after 5-6 years, the wine will make evolution, but every time the evolution is good. We have not bad evolution in the wine, and every time you think you feel the capacity of the wine.
It's fantastic. The Late St. George is amazing, and so there's something unique to Gouges. You have your own grape mutation, the Pinot Gouges. Is that unique to what is that, and where? How do you? Is it blended in the other wines, or is there one wine where the specific Pinot is? I mean, that was fascinating to me.
Actually, it's not very easy to speak about mutation with the COVID, but it's almost the same. In the nature, everything can have mutation, natural mutation. And Henri Gouges have found in the middle of Clos des Porets Saint-Georges in 1938 one grapes of white in the middle of a blocks of the monopole of 4 hectares of Pinot Noir. And it was totally surprised about that. And he have taken the decision to take a small part of wood and to graft him. And he have made 20 years to graft, year after year, some wine stock to make a small nursery of that. Mm-hmm. And in 1958, he have planted with that Nuits St, premier cru La Perrière. And he have just called that Pinot Blanc, because it comes from a Pinot Noir, but it was white. And you have just to say it's a Pinot Blanc with not other explication.
Wow.
And for a long time, we have sell the wine, and we have just to say it's a Pinot Blanc with no other explication. But maybe 15 years ago now, we have made a DNA analysis, and the result was white Pinot Noir. And the explication was it's a natural mutation of Pinot Noir in a white Pinot. It's not totally exceptional to see a mutation in a vegetal. The more exceptional is to see that and to exploit that, to make a multiplication of that. And today we are very, very happy because we make a white very different to the Chardonnay. La Perrière, for example, it's La Perrière in French is pierre, it's rock. Yes, I just read Alpino, yes. Albino Pinot, yes, we can say that. It's a Pinot Albino. So, sometimes some people for jokes say Pinot Albino, and sometimes some people say Pinot Gouges, because we just can find this variety here in the domain, and it's not the same Pinot Blanc from Alsace or for Champagne, for example. It's a cousin. It's very proche. It's very. It's not far, but it is not the same.
I know it's very delicious. I've had it only when visiting you, I believe. It's very difficult to find.
It's a very small production, right. But if one day you can fill bottle, it's very interesting to make a blind test. If you have some friends, it's not easy today with the pandemic, with the COVID. But if in the next month, you have just to take 3-4 friends, make a blind test, don't say it's a Burgundy wine, and it's almost impossible to say it's a Burgundy wine, and it's impossible to say it's a Nuits St.
Wow. And talk to us about, you know, winemaking in Burgundy in general, the climate change. A lot of people are picking earlier. You've had 100 years of history. What do you see happening in the next 100 years, you know, and dealing with Mother Nature? Are you picking earlier in general, or, you know, what is happening there?
I just hope it's a cycle, and I just hope more normal vintages for the next year. For example, 18, 19, 20, it was very, very hot. Particularly 2020, it was very, very dry. It was very hot, 35, 38 degrees every day. No rain, no water on the soil. The yield was very, very low. On the sun, I've made the evaporation of the water inside the berry. And for the harvest, the berry was very small and almost dry, with a big part of solid, but no juice. And it's not so bad for the balance, because when the water is evaporated, we keep the balance between the sugar and the acidity. The sun concentrated the acidity at the same time. But it's very not good for the yield, and it's not good for the vineyards. At the end of August, all the vineyards was a little brown. It was no green, because we have miss water, miss rain. Yes, we have taken the decision to make the harvest earlier. We have started to make the harvest at the end of the third week of August. It's the first time for me. Right. Normally, it's more in middle of September, right. Middle to end of September, but not in August, not start of September.
But the key is the picking, right? When you pick is the key. Like when the grapes are ready, the grapes are ready. So if it's a little earlier, it's a little earlier, right? The quality is still the same.
We have to adapt that, but it's not totally normal. And we don't want to make, for example, irrigation.
Right.
It's a good, it's good for play with the sun, but it's not good for us. It's not good for the balance of the wine, and not good for the typicity of the wine, typicity of the terroir. And yes, we have to adapt the date of the harvest, but I really hope it's a cycle and it's not the future.
Right. Well, your wines are incredible. I encourage everybody to try and buy some. We have some 17s available at the store right now. It's a current vintage. You will not be disappointed by drinking some of these. Thank you so much, Gregory. Thank you so much, everybody. Tune in tonight. We got the auction tonight, the auction tomorrow, 6 p.m. tonight, 6 p.m. tomorrow, ending with all the consignments direct from the Domaine. We have a bottle of 1959 from the cellars of Gouges. Thank you so much for this. You know, I might have to buy that one. I don't know. It's going to be, I'm thinking about it, but it's going to be exciting. And Gregory, keep up the great work. You're making amazing wines. Look forward to maybe seeing you in person, you know.
Yes, I really hope to see you, or see all the panelists here at the Domaine. It's very interesting to see everybody here and visit the Domaine and see the vineyard. It's not possible actually, but I really hope for the future to restart that.
Well, you know,
come in February.
All we can offer you is Sebastian at the moment, so I hope that's.
And I was born in 1945, so you can prepare the 45. Bottle.
Okay. I have.
All right. Thank you so much, Gregory.
Thank you. See you. Thank you very much. Bye.